I've been using this camera since the day it came out, and after years of using it on real-world projects, I'm recording right now on it. I think there's one feature that makes it still unbeatable, but nobody talks about this. I bought the Canon R5C in March 2020 when it came out. Actually, I think this unit, or the unit I had before, because one got damaged, was the first one ever released in Switzerland. I originally got it to film my bachelor thesis and filmed and lived out of a Land Rover Defender for some weeks and traveled through Norway. If you are interested in that and want to see some Swiss German vlogs, you can find that in my channel. But since then I've used this camera for almost everything. For solo shoots, small crews, campaign work, even for billboard photography, for social media content, in the mountains, in the snow, on the beach, everywhere. So let's talk about the price a little bit. The R5C sits right about the 3K mark, and this puts the camera below the FX3, but around the same price as the newer option, the C50, which we will talk about just in a minute. One newer option is the Nikon CR, which is around 2000, so you save 1000. These cameras all sit around the same level of projects and can rig out to bigger projects or can just use as a small creator. And talking about the Nikon ZR, in terms of workable 4K, the R5C still beats that. If you want the workhorse, 4K file sizes of the R5C and also the image quality which you get out of this camera is a little bit more reasonable for everyday work. And comparing it to the 4K you get out of the Sony, which I think the file sizes are a little bit better. But in Sony you have just not these Canon colors, because I think in terms of image quality and color accuracy, the Canon is still one of the best brands you can go with, because you got amazing skin tones and not that big file sizes as you would get with the red codec from the Nikon ZR. And then we still have the C50 and the R5C, which are basically the same price, and the C50 is obviously much newer and better autofocus and stuff like that, and also open gate. And this maybe is a big deal if you're shooting anamorphic or if you will need to crop in, but there are also really big file sizes. You almost get to a similar point of the Nikon ZR. And also for everyday use, I don't think you need that. And the R5C still has the 8K RAW, and you can record 8K up to 60 frames per second in the R5C, which gives you amazing data to work with in post. And for example, if you shoot anamorphic, then you can crop in and you don't lose any resolution when you're putting new files on a 4K timeline. But obviously, if you record in 8K, you still got an insane amount of data. So we are also in the same territory like the Nikon ZR or the open gate from the C50. And the 8K is still impressive to me. For example, you shoot the interview solo, you almost get two lenses in one setup because you can punch in so much, and you almost get a second perspective out of this just because of the latitude that you have with this 8K resolution. Now the downsides, the R5C is not perfect. It's not perfect by far. In the beginning, the biggest issue was the battery, and it still is kind of an issue. but you kind of nowadays can work around that. So one thing would be just attach a V-mount and rig out the camera, but you also can use just the new model batteries from Canon, which were introduced with the C50, and you can stick that into your R5C and get a reasonable amount of shooting out of your batteries. And if you bring 3-4 batteries, I think you're good to go for a whole day shoot. Also, compared obviously to the Nikon ZR, the screen is really tiny. Also, it's not the best screen either compared to other screens, but I think this is just how the cameras were built before the Nikon ZR. And also the autofocus, it's not the best. It's worse than the new C50, it's worse than the ZR, and it's worse than Sony, but I think it's good enough to do most of your projects. And also you can really dial in how you want autofocus to behave, which I think is a great thing to have in your camera, but it's not as good as the Sony. Also, obviously, micro HDMI, you have this little tiny port, which is not great, especially for a cinema camera. If you really need that, then you have to go with the C50. And also file sizes are big, so the 4K is really workable and has a good amount of detail and still prevents from getting large amount of file sizes, but it's bigger than the 4K from the Sony. And also if you shoot in 8K, you got different amounts of data sizes. You got your raw light, you got your standard raw, and these file sizes are just enormous. And when the camera came out, I initially thought the RF mount would be a pro of this camera because you got the same on the Komodo, and I thought then it would be compatible with more lenses, and more lenses will come. But as of today, I think you are kind of in a sinking ship with the RF mount, because all the third-party lenses, and especially we're talking about Blazer lenses or Suri or all, you name it, all these different anamorphic or cine lenses or just third-party lenses, they all do E-mount for the most part, and nowadays also Z-mount. And I think because Nikon bought Red, all the Red cameras also will have Z-mounts in the future, or at least this option, while you still can adapt all the BL glass. I think you still can make it work, and it still will be good also in terms of in the future. It's not that big of a deal, but I think if I could choose, I would much prefer E-mount, because just Canon doesn't allow any third-party manufacturers to do lenses, and I think that this is really not the way to go in these days. But also here, if you can adapt your old EF glasses to your Canon and got the adapter with the V&D in it, and then you don't have to screw on NDs, and it kind of makes the workflow like you would have internal ND in your camera. This is a good option, which is rarely seen in other systems. But let's talk about the one thing I think still makes this camera worth buying in 2026, and also I think you don't have anything else on the market that fits in this specific niche, and it's just the hybrid mode of this camera. It's how this camera was placed in 2022 in the market as a true hybrid camera. I think there is no other option where you really get a true hybrid camera with two different OS, one for photo and one for video. It's just a fully capable cinema camera and a fully capable photo camera. And yes, nowadays most cameras can do video and photo, but can they do it on a really professional level, especially photo? So can you print a billboard image out of a Nikon ZR or and the Sony FX3? And I think the answer just is no, you can't do this. And also different modes and reliability in photos, It's just not the thing that these mid-priced cinema cameras can do a photo as well as you would do it with R5C. R5C is really, you toggle the switch and it gets to a completely photographer camera, which is exactly the same as you would buy the R5, which means you're basically getting two cameras for one price tag. And not only that, I think also the video menu and how the camera buttons layout is and everything, it just works like a tool, and the menus from, for example, Sony and Nikon are just really not on the same level. You switch this video menu on in the R5C and everything is laid out properly. You find all the settings you need. You have false color internally. You have switching between codecs is really easy. You can switch shooting modes by buttons. You have several buttons layout. You can map all the functions to all the buttons. Just everything you need and you can think of in a cinema camera, software-wise, you have this in this camera. And we can't say this about a lot of other cameras. So who is this camera for in 2026? And I think it really got to the true hybrid situation. So for example, if you are shooting a lot of travel stuff, maybe you want professional photos and also professional video. If you just can afford one camera, but you have to do photo and video on a professional level, then I think also the R5C is not only the best, but just I think almost the only option you have. There are some Sonys that are kind of in a similar field, but not to the extent of this true hybrid mode as the R5C. Also for small crews, and if you just want to have both photo and video as an option, and you want to do for the most part 4K work, but have the option of this occasionally shooting in 8K for some campaign shots or something, then this camera is still a good price point to have. But I think the really major point when you want to get it, you have one camera, one system, but you need photo and video. I think then you have to buy the R5C. And if you want the best image possible while still operating as a solo videographer sometimes, I think maybe the Nikon is something to look into, the Nikon ZR. Because the R3D just gets you, I think, better colors, more colorful work. If you already have some Sony lenses, I think then you maybe can wait until the next version of the FX3 comes out. And if you are only doing video and want to stay with Canon, then I think the C50 is absolutely amazing camera. It basically does everything the R5C does, just better. But no photos on this amount of megapixel, which I think I have forgotten, 45 megapixel R5C. It's just amazing in a video camera to have that. I think the C50 has 32, which isn't bad. You maybe can get away with that for most part. If you shoot for social media, there's still some latitude to crop in and stuff. It's not bad, it's better than the Sony or better than the CR. But if you want to do both at the same time, R5C I think is still the best bet. And if you want to see more footage I captured with the R5C, you can find that in my channel. And I'm really curious, are you still looking into buying the R5C in 2026? I'm looking forward to speak to you in the comment section. Peace.